I'm sure we've all been there, scrolling through EDH Rec, trying to find the perfect commander. You finally find one. Seems like a rare archetype. I thought elves were supposed to be cheap. Why is everything so expensive? When I started playing, 10-year-old me thought that $200 for a standard deck was a bit steep. Nowadays, you'd struggle to pick one up for less than $400. But none of that's relevant. This is a commander video. So what does it mean for EDH? Well, I've found that a lot of newer players have come to the game through Universes Beyond, which is great. This isn't a video talking about how Universes Beyond is ruining Magic, but undeniably they have hiked up the price of the game, with a booster costing $6.99 compared to $5.49 for in-universe sets. All of this means that people are forking over more cash than ever to play their favourite game. But what if I told you that you don't need to do that? You can build super strong and fun decks without fueling Hasbro's greed. But why should you build on a budget? For most people, the answer's obvious. Like myself, you're broke. Personally, I cannot afford to be taking out a new loan each time a set releases. Even if you do have the disposable income for it, then building on a budget still comes with so many benefits. I'm not going to linger here for long because I don't think I need to really sell it. You simply have so much freedom to build and test ideas. If you're onto a winner, then great. You know that you're safe to invest further or start trading into the more expensive pieces. Otherwise, no worries. You didn't remortgage the house for the deck. You can simply refire a new design, rinse and repeat. So, that being said, how do you do it? There are a couple of basic rules that I like to follow. First is the mana base. Generally, the less colours that you play, the better. I usually stick with 2. You can save majorly here just by keeping things simple. Don't be afraid of tap plans either, especially if you're playing at lower brackets. They don't bite, I promise. Now, for the actual deck. The main event. The meat and gravy, if you will. My goal is to find budget options for cards. Jokes aside though, I generally focus on finding synergy packages with many interchangeable pieces. That way I'm not like in the trenches if 1 or 2 cards are outside my budget. I actually recently added a new deck to my collection, helmed by Kirol, Attentive First Year. Thankfully, I already owned 1 or 2 more pricey cards which went in the deck. They could be easily swapped out though. Shipping included, I spent under $40 for the deck. Now, how did I manage it? Well, I built the deck around Astral Slide, meaning that I get to play a bunch of format staples, like Desert Ceradon. With playing over 30 cyclers, it means that there's plenty of room left in the budget for cards that actually have cool effects. Testing the deck, it's been such a blast to play. I've now started looking to upgrade it through trades. But because the first draft was so cheap, I was able to just buy it and test it in paper. This is the approach that I take for almost all of my decks. I find a theme that I think is cool, and then I do my best to set it apart from every other sort of strategy I've seen. The more bits of random junk that Wizards has printed to support the theme, the better. The best part is that it doesn't really matter what theme, as long as there are plenty of filler cards which I can use to keep the budget low. The most simple example for this would be a card like Persistent Petitioners. A deck can have any number of cards named Persistent Petitioners. Now, most cards obviously don't have this as a rules exception. Despite that, there are many interchangeable cards which are totally identical, or nearly so. Cards which are super cheap through excess, and thus can really reduce your budget. Now, when building any deck, you need a good draw suite, even more so with a budget deck. Being able to get through the deck quickly to assemble synergies and find your most powerful cards is essential. Thankfully, the best options are super affordable, like the One Ring and Ristic Study. Realistically, you won't always have access to the most insane draw ever printed. However, even some really strong card selection can make a really massive difference. Filtering your options to find the strongest cards is great when the individual card quality is a bit lackluster. Thankfully, many of the best-in-class options for things like removal or ramp are actually very affordable. This is what allows budget decks to still keep up in a lot of games. The fact is that as long as you have ramp, removal and card draw, you're actually already ahead of most decks. And when it comes to picking your commander, there's no real right choice here. Just make sure it's actually on budget, obviously. As I've touched on before, I love choosing commanders which actually exemplify my existing game plan. With Kirol, for example, the whole engine actually functions fine without him, but when he is in play, it's just juiced to the moon. This means that he's never really the biggest threat on board, because if he is a threat, then you'd rather remove the triggers that he's doubling. This is often how I choose to build my decks, because it means I don't have to waste slots on expensive protection spells. When building on a budget, one thing that I never want to compromise on is fun. You might be thinking, I don't want to just attack with grizzly bears all game. That doesn't sound fun, and that's fine, because it turns out many of the super unique cards printed aren't actually that expensive. I do not have time to go through all the options here, but if you want some inspiration, come check out the Discord. I post one unique card in the Discord every day, and for the next week after this video goes live, they'll all be under $1. This is today's card, Step Through. It gives some great utility. Admittedly, you might not be casting it much, but for example, you could cycle it for an Archaeomancer, buy it back, and then find more wizards. Also, who doesn't love a bit of wizard cycling? One of the only well-designed cards from the Modern Horizons sets. Now, the way I like to build decks often revolves around a few cards within the 99. This allows for me to splash out a bit more on the core engines of the deck, while keeping the supporting pieces relatively modest. Regardless of your disposable income, building on a budget is still a nice challenge. It forces you to find creative workarounds for problems, which are often just solved with cash. Maybe you can afford to build every single deck idea you have in paper. Even so, I'd still urge people to try out building decks this way. It often requires going right into the weeds on Scryfall to find cards that may never have seen the light of day otherwise. It might just be me, but I really think there's something charming about that. Trust me, give it a try. It will make you a better deck builder overall. In deck building, there is one problem I see more than any other, regardless of budget. So many decks just fall to pieces the second their command is removed. If that sounds like your decks, then check out this video here.